Amid the chilly morning breeze in the suburbs of Detroit, an Asian man stepped out of a high-end electric vehicle parked by the curb. His tailored gray suit fit perfectly, his silver-streaked hair neatly combed, and his calm gaze concealed a quiet unfamiliarity, one of a man who had just set foot in a new land. Wei Zhang, having arrived in the U.S. less than 48 hours ago, walked toward the ATM to withdraw some cash in preparation for his first meeting in his new role. As he reached out to the machine, a cold, sharp voice rang out from behind. "Hey, step away from the machine! This isn't a place for people like you." Startled, Wei turned around. Standing before him was a white man in his 40s, dressed in dark work overalls, holding a steaming cup of coffee. His face bore suspicion and hostility. "What are you doing here? Trying to hack someone's account? Or laundering money from China?" The air tensed like a tightened string. A few passers-by began to glance over. Keeping his composure, Wei responded in a calm yet firm voice. "I'm just withdrawing money, like any other citizen." The man scoffed. "Citizen? In this country?" He gestured toward the sleek electric car parked by the curb. "With that toy? Go back to your country and play economic fantasy, buddy." An elderly woman standing in line behind them spoke gently. "Let the man withdraw his money. Everyone has the right to be here." But the man barely glanced at her before sneering. "In America, we don't need more people coming in to take our jobs and bankrupt our car industry." Wei Zhang didn't retaliate. He quietly stepped aside, courteously letting the man take his place at the ATM. But in his eyes, a thoughtful glint appeared. The words of his father echoed in his mind. "Never let anyone teach you about discrimination. Teach them through your kindness." No one knew that just a few hours later, the man who had been humiliated at the ATM would walk into a grand conference room. And the very same man, Ethan Miller, the one who had insulted him, would find himself sitting in that room, unaware that the bias he showed that morning was about to come full circle in the most unexpected way. "Good morning, team. I'd like to introduce Mr. Wei Zhang, the new Chief Executive Officer of ZH Motors U.S. Division." The conference room fell into complete silence as Wei Zhang entered with a polite smile. Each step he took carried a quiet weight, not from the pressure of his new leadership role, but from the stunned expression of a man standing in the corner of the room. It was none other than Ethan Miller, the very same technician who had insulted him at the ATM the day before. Ethan's face flushed red, his eyes darted away, and his hands clenched into fists. He never imagined that the weak Asian guy he had mocked would turn out to be his new CEO. No one else in the room noticed Ethan's discomfort, except Wei Zhang. Yet the CEO remained composed, shaking hands with everyone until he finally stopped in front of Ethan. "We've met before, haven't we?" Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. I'm not sure." Wei Zhang simply smiled. "I hope this meeting leaves a better impression." A quiet chuckle rippled through the room, though no one understood the hidden meaning behind his words. The meeting proceeded as planned, discussing the rollout of ZH Motors' latest electric vehicle, the ZH Model X, into the North American market. As Wei Zhang spoke, he emphasized the company's three core values: reliability, sustainability, and respect for people. Ethan sat stiffly, his mind a storm of unease. He couldn't shake the memory of Wei's composed yet piercing gaze, the same man he had dismissed as a Chinese toy. As the meeting concluded, Wei Zhang turned to Ethan once more. "I look forward to working with you, Ethan. I believe you'll help me better understand the American market." Ethan bit his lip. He had never encountered someone who could remain so poised after such a demeaning insult. And in that moment, he began to understand. True strength doesn't come from raising your voice. It comes from an unshakable kindness. The technical issue affecting ZH Motors' electric vehicles in the U.S. quickly became a hot topic across internal forums and customer discussion boards. While the engineering team in China swiftly confirmed that the issue was a minor software glitch that could be easily fixed, another narrative had already begun to spread. One claiming that the company's products were unreliable, made with cheap parts, and lacked proper after-sales support. The man behind fueling this controversy was none other than Ethan Miller, the same technician who had confronted Wei Zhang at the ATM. At the office, Ethan sipped his coffee while whispering to a group of younger employees. Not surprised. You guys know how it is. Chinese products. Well, now customers are finally waking up. A colleague frowned and asked, "But there's no evidence that the parts are inferior, right? I mean, every car brand has had software issues before." Ethan smirked. "Evidence isn't necessary. Customer perception is what matters. And if I were a buyer, I'd have gone back to Tesla a long time ago." Although those words were never officially spoken, they quietly spread through meetings, customer service emails, and support calls. Orders began to slow down, a few VIP clients requested to delay their vehicle deliveries, and the customer care department found itself under increasing pressure. Wei Zhang reviewed the situation through the weekly complaint summary. He didn't say much. He simply asked the technical team to provide a full maintenance report on the vehicle in question. Then he personally called the affected customer, explaining the situation with calm professionalism and reassurance. His sincerity and composed communication changed the customer's stance. "I'm genuinely impressed. Not many companies have their CEO personally call me. I won't cancel my order." As the call ended, Wei Zhang returned to his desk in silence. Outside, the wave of public speculation continued, but he did not retaliate. Instead, he turned to his assistant and said, "We cannot lose to rumors. We win through our actions." A week later, the company held its first quarterly internal review meeting. The head of ZH Motors' U.S. division, Mr. Russell Kramer, an American of German descent, presided over the session. Wei Zhang arrived early, carrying a meticulously prepared data set on product quality, warranty rates, customer feedback, and retention performance. His composed and refined demeanor was not just that of a distinguished Asian CEO, but also of a seasoned executive who had successfully led major deals in Shanghai. As the meeting transitioned into the reporting phase, Ethan Miller, unexpectedly brimming with confidence, raised his hand to speak. He presented a survey titled, "American Consumers Losing Trust in Chinese Electric Vehicles," a report he had personally gathered from social media. The presentation was polished and the figures seemed logical, but there were no credible sources cited. Several members of the room frowned, some visibly wavering in their stance. Ethan glanced at Wei Zhang, thinking he had just scored a major point. But then, Wei calmly spoke up. "I have 3 questions. Who were the respondents? How many of them have actually used our product? And how many negative reviews were based on real experiences rather than rumors or emotions?" The entire room turned to Ethan. Sweat began forming on his forehead. He stammered, I shared the survey on my personal Facebook page. There were a few dozen comments, mostly from people who had heard about the product." Mr. Russell interrupted. "So there was no scientific verification?" Ethan fell silent. Wei Zhang simply smiled and bowed his head slightly. "Competition is a natural part of business. But if we use prejudice to bring down our rivals, then tomorrow any one of us could become the next victim of that same prejudice." The room fell into silence. No one cared about survey graphs or statistics anymore. They simply looked at Wei Zhang, the foreign CEO who, with quiet grace, made an entire boardroom rethink the meaning of ethics in business. On Friday afternoon, the company hosted a welcoming reception to officially celebrate Wei Zhang's leadership after 3 weeks as CEO of the U.S. branch. The venue was subtly decorated with an East Asian theme. The menu, personally suggested by Wei Zhang, featured classic dishes from Chinese cuisine: Peking duck, steamed buns, crispy wontons, silken tofu with mushroom sauce, and a few light vegetarian options. The atmosphere was lively at first. Some loyal customers even attended. People chatted and enjoyed the new flavors, all accompanied by soft background music. But just an hour in, Ethan Miller, the very man who had clashed with Wei at the ATM, clutched his stomach in discomfort, his face pale. Another colleague complained of a headache. Both were taken to the hospital. The next morning, Ethan posted a cryptic status on the company's internal network. "I guess the American digestive system doesn't agree with Peking duck. Goodbye, soy sauce." Beneath it, a young employee sarcastically commented, "Shouldn't eat food from a place where you wouldn't even drink tap water." The rumor of food poisoning from Chinese cuisine spread rapidly. although doctors confirmed it was merely an individual allergic reaction with no relation to food safety. Skepticism took root. Some employees began distancing themselves from Wei Zhang. The workplace atmosphere grew tense and uncomfortable. On Monday morning, Wei Zhang entered the meeting room, stood before the team, and gave a small bow. "I am truly sorry that some of you felt unwell after the gathering. I had the same dishes, and I found them delicious. But if anything, whether in taste or culture, made anyone uncomfortable, I sincerely apologize for not considering it more carefully." The room fell silent. Ethan kept his head down, saying nothing. No one had expected the man who had been insulted and wrongly blamed to be the first to apologize. That evening, Brian, the head of the technical team, returned home and shared with his daughter. "You know, today I met a leader who, even after being insulted, still remained calm and apologized to the entire company. I don't know what school he graduated from, but I'm certain he holds a degree in human kindness." After the Peking duck incident, Ethan quietly launched an internal campaign to undermine CEO Wei Zhang by exploiting minor issues in the company's electric vehicle warranty system. One customer brought in their car due to a slow-charging battery issue. Ethan took the opportunity to whisper, "Well, you know how it is with Chinese cars. Typical quality. Honestly, if you can afford it, you should switch to an American brand. Tesla, for example." In another case, he deliberately entered an incorrect error code in a technical report, causing delays in customer service response. When Wei Zhang reviewed the records, he noticed the discrepancies and called Ethan in for a private discussion. Everyone assumed that this time, Wei Zhang would fire Ethan, but he didn't. The meeting lasted 20 minutes. Ethan walked out, his face frozen and unreadable. No one knew what had transpired inside until a close colleague asked Wei Zhang, "Why didn't you fire him?" He simply replied, "Because if I retaliate, I become just like him. I didn't come here to create another person who resents me for being different." His generosity made those who had remained silent start to rethink their stance. A few younger engineers quietly shifted their support, taking the initiative to assist Wei Zhang in technical meetings. No one said it out loud, but a silent transformation had begun. That morning, Wei Zhang stepped onto the stage at the Chicago Electric Vehicle Technology Conference, a gathering of hundreds of business representatives, investors, and media professionals. The spotlight shone on him, as if scrutinizing not just one man, but the entire country standing behind him. His face remained calm, his steps steady, but his eyes were as still as a lake before a storm. No one expected much from him, a Chinese CEO representing a rising EV company who had recently been caught in rumors of product failures and a so-called Peking duck food poisoning scandal at a customer appreciation event. Some had even prepared critical analyses in advance, and yet he began his speech with a sentence that silenced the entire auditorium. "I did not come here today to boast about achievements. I came here to apologize." A ripple of whispers spread through the audience. "I apologize," he continued, "if our vehicles have not been perfect. I apologize if some customer experiences did not meet expectations. And I apologize if I, as a foreigner, have done anything to make you feel distant." Pausing briefly, he then said softly, "But just as an electric car needs charging to continue its journey, I believe people need kindness to move forward together." A black journalist stood up and asked bluntly, "Are you aware that an employee from your own company has been secretly telling customers not to buy Chinese cars?" Wei Zhang nodded. "I am aware," he said, "and I did not fire him, because I believe that to change prejudice, we must start with dialogue, not punishment." After his talk, as he walked to the parking lot, an unexpected sight awaited him. A Tianmei TS7, a high-end electric vehicle model that he rarely used, was parked with its engine already running. The driver stepped out. It was Ethan, the very same employee who had discriminated against him at the ATM, the same man who had fueled the Peking duck controversy. Ethan spoke in a quiet voice, almost a whisper. "I know you usually don't drive company cars, but this one, I bought it myself. I wanted to understand why you still don't hate me." Wei Zhang looked at him, then silently got into the car. He didn't say a word, but his eyes glistened, not because of past insults, but because he had seen a seed of kindness sprouting in barren soil. The next day at the company-wide meeting, Wei Zhang entered without a laptop, without a data presentation. In his hand was a small piece of paper, a printed excerpt from the internal security camera footage. He didn't play the video. He simply placed the paper on the table in front of Ethan, a transcript of the conversation where Ethan had spoken negatively about the company and encouraged customers to buy from competitors. The room grew tense. Some colleagues looked at Ethan with disappointment. Others lowered their heads in discomfort. Wei Zhang was not angry. He simply asked, "Ethan, if I fire you, what will you learn?" Ethan stammered, unable to respond. Wei Zhang continued, "But if I forgive you, what will you learn?" The room fell into absolute silence. Ethan stood up, his voice trembling. I will learn how to make things right and to appreciate the opportunities I have." A female employee who was of Korean descent suddenly spoke up. "Yesterday, Ethan was the only one who stood up for me when a customer mocked my accent. I think he's changing." Wei Zhang smiled. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to have the courage to change and to respect differences." The meeting ended with a round of applause, one that no one had asked for. Some clapped quietly, some had tears in their eyes, and everyone understood. For the first time, they had a leader who didn't rule by pressure, but by heart. A week after the emotional company meeting, social media erupted when security camera footage from the ATM incident resurfaced. The moment where Ethan had made racist remarks toward Wei Zhang. The video was less than a minute long, but the harsh words captured in it ignited public outrage. Many online users demanded Ethan's immediate termination from TNMA, calling for the company to take action. Others, however, criticized Wei Zhang, accusing him of being too lenient towards someone who had disrespected him. As the wave of backlash intensified, it was Wei Zhang himself who responded, not with anger, but with an open letter, published on the company's official website. "I do not believe in condemning a person based on a single video. I believe in journeys, and every journey requires time to correct, to heal, and to grow." He continued, "Forgiveness is not about whether someone deserves it. It is about allowing ourselves to move forward. We all make mistakes, but if no one has the patience to engage in dialogue, how will we ever learn to live together?" The letter was shared millions of times. Journalists praised it as a leadership lesson for the 21st century. One major publication ran the headline, "A Chinese EV CEO teaches America how to move beyond racism." Others described it as an Eastern philosophy of leadership that should become a universal value. Shortly after, Ethan himself stepped forward publicly. He did not make excuses. He did not defend himself. Standing before the media, he simply said, "I am living proof that anyone can change if someone believes they are worthy of change." TNMA, once a company from a country that had long been underestimated, suddenly became a symbol of progress and modern values. Orders skyrocketed. But what made Wei Zhang proudest was not the surge in sales. It was what happened at the company's end-of-year meeting. As the session concluded, every single employee stood up and applauded. Then they presented him with a hand-drawn painting. It depicted Wei Zhang seated at a simple lunch table, pouring tea for Ethan, the very man who had once scorned him. Beneath the image was an inscription, "A stranger is just someone we haven't truly listened to yet." Wei Zhang's story became a global case study in business schools. It was taught at Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, a testament to the idea that in modern leadership, the greatest strengths are not control or retaliation, but soft power, compassion, and the ability to lead with humanity.